Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into questioning beliefs. So before we get into that, Selina has this week's parenting moment.
Yeah, so I have my child who will be not named in the mornings has a hard time getting ready for school. I have expectations and ideas of how my kids should get ready and how fast they should. And I find myself often nagging and reminding, and it's actually just very annoying. I annoy myself and I usually don't feel very good or happy. And so I'm trying to make a conscious effort with this child in particular. I've been saying to her, what can I do to help you? I feel like that gives her a little more control and doesn't feel like me telling her everything to do. And she can pick or choose or ask me or have me help what she needs. And I can't say I'm perfect, just trying it. But I know today it made a difference for me and how I felt after they left for school, and I didn't beat myself up for being mean to them all morning. So that was nice. But I just think a little shift and it's still going to get done and I'm still going to be helping. But I think it shifted to help her feel like she had a little more control as to what was happening in the morning.
I feel like a lot of struggles with kids come from power struggles, right? Like a lot of times it's a power struggle. They're trying to get as much control as they possibly can because there's so much that they can't control. And human beings, even at a young age, really like control. So I think that's actually a good perspective. It also reminds me of the listener story that we did several weeks ago now with our friend Melissa, who talked about her struggles with her daughter and how the goal was to kind of help her shift her narrative and change the way she thought and the way she was reacting to the situation, because she can't change the way her daughter, or she can't change her daughter. She can only control herself. And so that's really what I thought of as, oh, hey, you're using the model. You are changing the way you're thinking about something to get a different result. And I think that's really helpful because, we can't, at the end of the day, we can't control everything our kids do, much as we may want to, but we can certainly control how we react. Okay, so when teens rethink what you've taught them and how to respond with love is what we're going to get in today. So this normal part of development, especially once you get to the adolescent age, so maybe between ages 11 to 13, kids are going to start seeking autonomy from their parents. They're going to try to individuate from their parents. They want to become their own person. They want to form their own ideas, their own opinions. They want to form their own identity. And that's actually a really exciting thing if you think about it. But it can be really tricky if they start questioning beliefs that you may have taught them their entire life. And it's our job as parents to teach them morals, right? To teach them our beliefs. Passing down our beliefs to our kids is really important. That's one of our primary jobs. And there are some morals that teens obviously can't question. Stealing is one of those beliefs. If your kid just decides to start thinking, well, I believe that it's actually okay to steal from people. It's like, well, no, that's not going to work because that's going to get you in jail. So let's not try that one. But, there's all sorts of other beliefs. And the biggest one that I can think of is often religion. That can be a really big one for parents, but this can fit into anything. Maybe it could be political beliefs. It could be family traditions, right? I mean, there can be any number of things that you can spend your kid's whole life teaching them. And then, they can suddenly wonder, I don't know if that's what I believe. I'm not sure that's what I want in my life. And I'm not sure that's what I want to do and how I want to live my life as an adult. That can be kind of scary for parents. but it doesn't have to be as scary as we make it out to be. It could be an opportunity for connection. So tell me your thoughts on this.
I think it is kind of a challenging situation when a child starts to maybe go a direction that we don't find as valuable, maybe like you said, religion or politics or family values, whatever the case is. And the likelihood that your teenager is going to stray from some of your beliefs is pretty high. It happens pretty often. But as you're going to hear throughout this podcast, probably, like, our focus will always be to encourage connection, focus on the relationship, and we can't control what our kids are going to believe and what they're going to like and what they're going to dislike and what they're going to follow. We teach them the principles, we guide them, we direct them, and then they make their own decisions. And if you look at your relationships in the world, you probably have good relationships with people from all kinds of different religions or beliefs or political backgrounds or whatever the case is. And you can still value those people and have good healthy relationships with them. And the same thing is going to be true about your kids. They're not going to do things exactly the way you do them. They're going to do things different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess I have to wonder if the harder we push, when they do start going a different direction, then we're really just pushing them further into that direction instead of focusing on the connection, on the relationship.
I'll tell you why it's hard. It's hard because of our thoughts about it. Our thoughts are, oh, why are they thinking this? Or when we make it about us, like, what did I do wrong as a parent? I didn't teach them well. Why are they questioning? Why aren't they doing this? So our thoughts are what's creating that to be hard for us. And Liz, as you already mentioned, this is part of the process. This is something that could be exciting. It could be something that we could think, oh, this is exciting. They're going to learn and grow for themselves. They're going to figure this out. Because if I could take you at the end and say, this is what they have to go through to become this XYZ of what you think they should be, then you would be excited and you'd want that to happen.
I think another thing that can be helpful is to focus on the long-term relationship with your teen, right? And to really ask yourself, okay, what do I want most out of my relationship with my teen? And if you're thinking, when they become an adult, I think for most of us parents, the goal is to have kids that want us to be a part of their adult life, right? So we want to be a part of their life as they become an adult, as they go out into the world. We want them to still come around, that we want them to talk to us. And so trying to make that your focus of, okay, how can I maintain a connection through this phase of them questioning or of them thinking and believing differently than I do? How do we navigate that in a successful way that allows us both to still have mutual love, understanding, and respect for one another? And also keep in mind that it could be just a phase rather than, who they are. Just because, so like, say, kid says, well, I don't know if I actually believe in this religion that you've raised me to be a part of. And for a lot of people, religion is really, really important. And when you're teenagers, like, well, I'm not sure if I really believe, it can be really easy for parents to go, and as Selina said, and internalize it, oh no, where did I go wrong as a parent that they're not believing? This isn't actually about you. This is about them and their discovery process. And so rather than just trying to force more religion on them, help guide them and maybe give them opportunities to decide for themselves.
Well, we already just talked about that in the parenting moment, right? You said everyone wants to feel like they have control. So what can they have control over? What can they be able to make choices with? And so finding those opportunities for them to feel like they have some control. And this could be them, like you said, temporarily trying to feel like they have some control over something.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say that, it can be a scary situation or a concerning situation. But at the end of the day, I have to wonder, like, I think we really want our kids to explore what they believe and to explore maybe other options and other things out there because then when they come to whatever decision they come to, especially when it comes to religion, then they have their own conviction of whatever that might be, right? And instead of just leaning on, well, mom and dad told me, so I'm going to do this, or
Mhm.
mom and dad, it comes to politics, I'm just going to call my mom and dad and say, hey, what do I put on the ballot?
Right.
Versus just being independent and being able to think for themselves and make their own decisions. That's part of what we're trying to do as we raise kids, is to raise independent individuals capable of thinking through things and making decisions and having convictions about whatever it is that they have a conviction about. Because just forcing them into it is not ever going to be helpful for anyone.
I mean, I agree with what you said about I don't think you want your kid to believe in something just because it's what you believe in. That's not the idea, nor is it really truly believing in something. It's just following someone else's beliefs. And as human beings, I don't think that's what we're meant for. I really think that we're meant to form our own ideas and our own opinions about things. And another problem is if your kid only ever believes in something because you believe in it, it's going to be really easy for their beliefs to get knocked to the ground when somebody comes and questions them. Right. And so that's another thing is kids need their own conviction so that they can stand on those convictions and say, yes, this is what I believe in. Right. And I believe in it because because I've given this thought, not because this is what mom and dad have told me I believe in my whole life. And for young kids, that's totally normal. It's totally normal for young kids to believe whatever their parents believe. They are so malleable. And that's why it is so important for us to teach our young children our values and to pass those down. And, that really is a good thing. And I think all of us would wholeheartedly support all parents passing down their individual and family values. And so, but eventually you want them to be able to say, yeah, I believe this too, not just this is what mom and dad told me I should believe.
Yeah. And I think when we come from a place of curiosity with our children, when they start to maybe question beliefs or standards or whatever we've set up and taught in our homes, when they start to question that and we come from a place of curiosity, now we're going to increase the connection, right?
Yeah.
And there is going to be a whole lot more capacity to influence people when we come from a place of compassion, of curiosity, and where we can have level-headed conversations where our children are free to explore what their thoughts are with us and what their struggles are with us. That just develops that connection. And when we have that connection, then we can influence, because our influence is going to carry a lot more weight for them in that scenario than if we're just trying to force it on them.
Yeah. And I think this is where a key piece that I know we've talked about that recently, but this is really where validation doesn't mean I agree with you can really come into play. So if you're having this really great open conversation with your teen, with your kiddo, and they're expressing, well, I think this is what I think about this topic. And in your mind, you might be thinking, but that's not what I taught you, rather than just saying, but that's not what I taught you. Saying, okay, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, or I understand where you're coming from. It doesn't necessarily have to mean, yeah, I think you're right about this. If it is something contrary to what you believe in, you can just say, I understand your point of view. That doesn't mean I agree with you. And I think that's really important to distinguish, because obviously you're going to hold to your boundaries, you're going to hold to your beliefs. That's a good thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't try to understand and genuinely want to understand where they're coming from so that they feel heard and that they feel like they have a voice too.
Yeah, I think validation is definitely critical for these conversations. And I love what you said about it. It doesn't mean we believe it or agree with it. It just means that we recognize that, hey, you're experiencing some things that are different than what we're experiencing.
Yeah. And that's not a bad thing. And again, if you come from a place of curiosity, they're more likely to open up to you and come to you and come at you with questions. And they're also more likely to be open to you sharing your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences on these things, whatever it may be. If you're willing to listen to them, then I think that's where Jeremiah was implying you're going to have more influence, because they're going to be more willing to listen to you. Now, I think a temptation in these instances is going to be to go into lecture mode and to share all our wisdom and why these beliefs are so good and why it's such a good idea to believe this way. I don't think that's going to be helpful. Oftentimes, I think when we get into lecture mode, teens kind of tune us out. I'm wondering if this has been your guys' experience.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And of course, we want to persuade them and change their ideas. But I think, like it's already been said, when you can really get to a place of curiosity and understanding them, understanding why they feel that way, or like, tell me more about that, or where did you come to that conclusion, and understanding and hearing what they have to say is gonna, I think actually I learn a lot more, and I understand a different perspective of the world and can have some compassion and understanding, and it actually helps me to educate me and help me to be able to see things in a different way when I really listen and really learn what they're experiencing and how they view things and why.
Yeah. And, it's important to let kids individuate, to let them explore, and to let them become their own person. And that's not to say that it might not be tricky. Like, say you've raised your kid in a particular faith their whole life, and then they go off into the adult world and decide, I no longer want to be a part of this faith. That can be tricky to navigate. And I think in those instances, expect bumps in the road, expect there to be some disagreements, maybe even some hurting of feelings, and you don't have to catastrophize it and think, oh, this is the end of the relationship. I think it's an opportunity to repair and say, hey, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't handle this situation correctly. What can we do moving forward?
Our relationships with our children should never be based on their willingness to follow our beliefs and our convictions,
Yes.
especially when it comes to faith. Holy cow. I think we do that too often to our kids, where they begin to feel like our love is based on their willingness to follow whatever we've taught. Our love should always be unconditional. We should love them regardless of what they do, choose, want, believe, think, or feel. Like it's just got to be there for them. And then some of these struggles go away when we recognize that, and when we're able to implement that, and when our children see that, when they see that they're loved no matter what, that we care for them and we'll be there for them no matter what they do, choose, or think.
Yeah, and that's not to say that it can't be, tricky even as they become an older teenager and maybe they decide, well, I don't want to go to church with you anymore. I don't want to go to this family function anymore because I don't like it. And that can be difficult to navigate. And I think that boundary and what that's going to look like is going to be different for every family. But, it's going to be tricky, and expect bumps. And no, it's okay to have bumps. And, I think, again, just focusing on, hey, my main goal is to make sure that you understand that even though we're having this disagreement about something, and even though we're in conflict right now, my main focus is that I want you to still know I still love you and I'm still here for you no matter what.
Well, and we have to do it through more than just words too, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to be the way we are. It has to be the way we live. I can say I love you all day long, but if I turn around and smack you and disrespect you and those kinds of things, well, that doesn't mean anything. So showing the love and having that connection before those things come up can be super helpful. Now, it's not always ideal, right? We don't always get the ideal, I should say. And sometimes we end up in these situations where the relationship is strained, the connection's not there, and they choose something different. And now we're trying to show love to them. And it's challenging. It's tricky.
Yeah.
But focus on the relationship. And that's where we start. We shouldn't, need to change our beliefs or back down from what we believe and think. But we can maintain those beliefs and standards and still love our children, show them that we love them, and allow them to explore something different. allow them to be independent and explore it with them and have that curiosity mind.
I think it's okay for you to take time to be disappointed or have compassion for yourself that you're struggling or it's difficult for you. I don't think it should just be like, oh, I need to change how I think because I want to be happy. And like, you got to take the time to process that for yourself and understand who you want to be and who you want to show up as. And it's okay. Don't beat yourself up that if you're disappointed or having those feelings of frustration, absolutely, you're going to have that. So work through it and figure it out and figure out who you want to be, and then decide that your thoughts about this situation is what's going to create all of that feelings. And maybe you don't want to have certain feelings. Well, then let's change the way that we're thinking about this situation. But it's okay to be upset and to be sad or mourn what you thought something would be.
I agree with that because it is hard. And oftentimes, if you think about how we came to these beliefs, we're teaching our kids because we believe it. And it's something that we've believed into our adult life and we care enough to pass it down to them. And I think it can feel like a rejection of you in some ways. And it's okay to feel that rejection and to feel that sorrow and mourn, what used to be, but that doesn't have to diminish the relationship. And I think if you're feeling like they're rejecting you, then I think at that point it is pretty important to shift the perspective into they're not rejecting me as a parent. It's not because they don't love me. It's because they're a person too. They're an individual and they have to come to their own beliefs.
So something that has helped me into making that shift and to be able to get my mind, my thoughts where I want them to be is to understand that we have what's called a manual for everybody. So I think my husband should be a certain way or do a certain thing. I think my kids should be doing a certain thing. So when your kids start questioning or doing things differently, that's kind of going against the manual you have for them. Like, my kids should be doing this, or teenagers should be doing this. And so if I can step back and think, hey, what is the story I have for them? What is the manual I've created? Like, what I think they should be doing. What does that story look like? Maybe that story is different than what I thought it should be. And accept and embrace and be excited maybe for some of those different ways that this story is going to play out differently than you thought it would. And find what's exciting and be excited about what that could be.
Yeah. How can I use this situation to form a closer bond with my kid? How can I help them to feel included and important to the family dynamic? Because I think that can be another tricky piece, is if maybe you have several kids and just one of them is questioning their beliefs, or one of them maybe decides, I don't think this is what I want in my life anymore. It can make them feel like they're on the outs with everybody. And that can be a really lonely place for a teen to be. And so, finding ways to help your teen still feel like they are a valued and important part of the family can be really critical in helping to maintain that connection.
Yeah, and I think that just takes us right back to the need for having that unconditional love, right? Everybody needs to have a sense of belonging, and especially within the family, whatever that looks like. And the belonging should never be based on, your adherence to a specific religious or belief or a political ideology or whatever it is, right? That belonging is there because they have value as a member of our family. And just because they're a member of our family means they have value, no matter what they believe. And I think that's such an important piece. And it's a hard thing sometimes for us to do as parents, but building their individual worth, but helping them build their self-confidence and who they are would really help alleviate some of those potential struggles.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that can be tricky is navigating boundaries, right? So oftentimes religious beliefs come with certain practices and certain boundaries of, things that we regularly do, and then maybe things that we don't do for religious reasons. And again, what those boundaries are going to be different for each individual family. But I think another thing that is important is, accepting your kid doesn't have to necessarily mean accepting what they think the boundary should be, right? So like whatever it is, I think an easy example we could come up with is, drinking. You think your value, part of your family belief system is you should not drink before the age of 21. Well, if you're 17 or 18-year-old decides, I think you're wrong. I don't believe that. I think it's okay. That doesn't mean you have to just allow them to drink in your home, and you should allow them to bring alcohol into your home or drink your alcohol that you have in your home. That's not necessarily what you need to do either. It's still perfectly safe to say, okay, when you're in my home, I still expect you. I can understand and respect your beliefs, but I expect you to do the same thing when you're in my home. And, you still need those boundaries.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. There's still the expectation, especially if they're minor. You got to live this way if you're in our home. If you're not going to live that way, then, it might be best to make other arrangements for living, because my home I get to set the rules in my home. I get to set the expectations. I get to set the boundaries and the standards of what life looks like within the walls of my home. And you get to choose, what yours look like. You get to choose your own boundaries and your own expectations, but you get to choose those inside your home, not mine. And so, there's definitely that expectation, and making sure the expectations are clear is important, especially if we get into that transition from, teenage into adulthood and independence. Then we really have to navigate that carefully, because it can be tough.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. I feel like that applies with bedtime though, even for younger kids. Right? When you're an adult, you get to set your own bedtime, but right now you're a kid and I get to be in charge of your bedtime. And again, and it's not that that's just going to always go seamless. I think you can expect these boundaries that you set to cause friction, and it's okay that your teen is going to be mad at you. As we said before, it's not your job to always be your teen's best friend. It's your job to parent your teen. And I think it's important to try to be a friend to your kid. I think that is an important part of the relationship, is to take an interest in what they're interested in, and, try to, again, build and cultivate that connection. That's part of a friendship, but you have to be a parent before you be a friend. And that's why just saying, oh yeah, my teen's my best friend and we're best friends, that doesn't work, because you're going to have to do things that are going to make your teen mad. That's kind of part of the parenting experience.
Well, yeah, you have a responsibility, right? You have a responsibility to get your kids to bed at a certain time so that they can get the rest that they need, because they don't understand the implications of staying up late. They can't quite grasp that when they're really young, right? And maybe sometimes when they're teenagers. You have an obligation as a parent to keep them safe, to put clothes on them, to help them, learn and grow, and to have food. Those are your obligations. So I think that's a little bit different, but once they transition into that adulthood, maybe they believe that staying up till 1 a.m. and getting up at 9 is better. Well, I guess that's their choice, and they'll have to live with the consequences of those decisions, making it difficult to get up for work or whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Or maybe they have a work schedule that allows them to, like my husband's.
Maybe. And that happens, and that's okay.
It is, right. And I say that it's just kind of, bedtime or whatever it's a silly little example, right? But again, eventually they are going to choose for themselves. And Curtis is very much a night owl. I've said this before, this man would rather gouge his own eyes out than get out of bed before he absolutely has to. And as I don't know what it was like for him as a kid, or what boundaries or what rules his mom set, but either way, he's an adult, he functions in society, and he has a job, and has had a job for more than just his adult life. He's had held down jobs since he was a teenager. And so maybe that's another thing to consider is, our main goal is for our kids to grow up and function in society. And so how can I help them do that while still trying to give them freedoms to choose what they can, right?
Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts.
I would just reiterate what Jeremiah already said, that my love isn't dependent on my teen's agreement with me. That's a good phrase and a good thought to practice, to have and think about. And just, even just you saying there's just different ways of doing things and different thoughts and ideas, and how accepting them for who they are and changing that story you might have for them that would be more positive and build more connection between the two of you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Selina. Connection is really the foundation there, right? And create the connection, focus on the relationship, and be curious about what they're experiencing. Maybe some of their beliefs that are contrary to yours, maybe it's a phase, maybe it's just a question, maybe it's nothing more than that. And it's a good opportunity to strengthen our connections with our kids. It's a good opportunity to explore things with them and to show them how much we love them and appreciate them regardless of what direction they choose to go in life.
Yep. And I think I would just say my final thought is, don't make it about you. It's about them. Focus on what can I do to support them rather than where did I go wrong as a parent. It's just not helpful. It's not a helpful question, and it's probably not anything you did wrong. It's just this is a part of the teenage life.
Yep.
Okay, so next week we are going to get into a little bit of a continuation of this topic, and that is navigating relationships with adult children. So, fun topic, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.